How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne and this is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. This is the weekend update here on the channel and we have some great topics to cover today. We're going to start out talking about how Sony is kind of taking Apple to task with a new hardware update. Then we're going to talk about a problem that's popped up with the PlayStation Portal that's kind of going wild on Reddit. And finally, there's a couple of updates and new games out that I think are worth taking a look at. Before I jump into it, just want to say thanks for all the subscriptions lately. I did more this month than I have in a very long time. And I also want to shout out the new PSReady Twitter. I started it back up and I'm sharing everything from like impressions on news and of course some gameplay clips. This video is sponsored by Unicorn Overlord. Unicorn Overlord is the rebirth of retro fantasy strategy that embarks audiences on a nostalgia-infused epic SRPG adventure, inviting them to forge alliances, liberate kingdoms, and explore an expansive world with stunning visuals. It's a classic heroic fantasy tale that pays homage to classic 16 or 32-bit strategy RPGs. And it also has a gorgeous modern 2D aesthetic for tactics fans that want to test their real-time strategy skills with 40 to 50 hours of gameplay. There's a demo available now and your demo progress carries over to the actual game, which is awesome. And Unicorn Overlord is available on Nintendo Switch, Xbox Series X and S, PS5, and over on PS4 as well, but on PS4 it's digital only. Unicorn Overlord is available for pre-order now and launches March 8th, 2024. Once again, huge shout out to Unicorn Overlord for sponsoring this video. So let's jump into the first news topic here. Thankfully, Sony finally remembered that the PSVR 2 exists. In the last state of play, they gave it quite a bit of love with new games like Legendary Tales. There's new updates coming to Arizona Sunshine 2. Zombie Army 4 apparently is getting a VR game. There's a new Metro game coming to VR that I'm extremely excited to play. And yeah, just hearing acknowledgement of this hardware from Sony makes me happy, because if you look to their past, if something doesn't immediately pop off when they release it, they kind of abandon it. And it doesn't seem like they're doing that with the PSVR 2. There are, of course, less games coming to this hardware than there are regular PS5 and PS5 Slim, but at the end of the day, there just aren't that many VR games out there, even on PC. So to know that Sony is actually putting some work into this. They just did a PlayStation blog post today, for example, that highlights some new games and some new updates coming to the headset, which is awesome, but tucked in at the very end there's a really cool paragraph that got me more excited about this headset than I think I ever have been. The paragraph reads, "We're pleased to share that we are currently testing the ability for PSVR 2 players to access additional games on PC. This will offer even more game variety in addition to the PSVR 2 titles available through PS5. We hope to make this support available in 2024, so stay tuned for more updates." The thing I like about Sony is when they say 2024, they definitely mean 2024. Hopefully we don't have to wait till the very end of the year though, because obviously with VR kind of bigger than it's ever been, with stuff like the Meta Quest 3 really taking off and of course the new Apple Vision Pro, Sony really has an opportunity here to show off their headset, because while I haven't exactly used an Apple Vision Pro, I have no issues with the PSVR 2. I think by far it's the best headset I've ever used. The screen looks amazing. The Sense controllers are bar none the best controllers you can use on a VR headset. I know a lot of people like the Valve Knuckles and I am partial to those as well, but at the end of the day, having DualSense features built into the Sense controllers makes them far and away just the best option when it comes to playing in VR. And while yes, there are a lot of options when it comes to playing VR games on the PlayStation 5, the amount of games that you have there versus the amount of games that you have on Steam or the Oculus Store, it's not even really comparable. Facebook loves to throw around money. They just released Asgard's Wrath 2, and that is being called the best VR game of all time, for example. That's a game I've been really curious to try, but like, I can't go back to the Oculus Quest 2 from the PSVR 2, man. It's just too big of an upgrade in terms of how great the screens look in front of your eyes, the controls, and how comfortable it is to wear on your head. With the Oculus Quest 2, the thing was way too front heavy and it gave me neck tension like on the back of my neck. The PSVR 2 does not have that problem. It's a lot softer on your face as well. And the way I counteracted that heaviness of the Oculus Quest 2 was to like Velcro a battery pack onto the back of the headband, and I didn't have to do that with the PSVR 2. And the fact that it's cabled and long enough means that you're never going to run out of battery, which is another problem with the Oculus Quest 2, and I'd imagine a problem with the Oculus Quest 3 as well. And comfortability also seems to be a huge factor as to why a lot of people are returning their Apple Vision Pros. I think the hardware is obviously a little bit of a leap over what we have with the PSVR 2, but it's not a gaming platform. It's made for like productivity. It's made to give you multiple monitors, allow you to watch Disney Plus on the moon. It's like the most casual type of VR out there because it's also built around AR, whereas the PSVR 2 is 100% built with gaming in mind. There are even more VR games I'd be really excited to play again on PC, like Boneworks and Bone Labs. Those are two of my favorite VR games ever. Contractors is another great one, and of course, the crown jewel of all VR games, Half-Life Alyx, is still only available on Steam. And while yes, it is cool plugging in your Oculus Quest 2 to a PC and getting that sort of like one-to-one regular VR headset move that you can do on PC with that technology, I think at the end of the day, the best experience for Half-Life Alyx would 100% be playing it on the PSVR 2. VR is such a weird platform because no matter what, it feels like it's always going to be niche. I understand that there's like this big push for AR and they want people to have these headsets on in the real world. I mean, I'm sure you've seen all these videos going around where people are driving their Tesla Cybertrucks and then getting out of their car and like texting in midair. And to me, I don't know, it just looks super corny. I've seen all the tweets that are like, everyone said that AirPods looked corny and now everyone wears AirPods without a second thought. And the same thing goes for the Apple Watch. And yes, I agree with that, but I think it's a little bit different when you're talking about strapping a headset to your face. That's just something I don't ever really want to do personally because I like enjoying the real world. I go on a lot of walks with my dog. I love walking to the gym. I love going to the park in my town that I live in because it has a pool and everything like that. And I just like hiking and exploring. And when I do that, I like to get away from technology. And there's something really cool about coming home and having a dedicated gaming system with a dedicated gaming VR headset that's always ready to go and doesn't take any fiddling around with. And it's not made to be worn outside in the real world. The one thing I think they really need to work on still with the PSVR 2 is price. And unfortunately, Sony's big goal this generation seems to be doing as few price drops as possible, which is pretty frustrating. All the rumors that we just talked about around the PS5 Pro have basically spelled out that when the PS5 Pro comes out, it's going to be much more expensive than the current PS5, even the PS5 Slim, and they're not planning on dropping the price of the PS5 Slim to compensate for that. So you're going to be paying still by the end of this year when the PS5 Pro comes out, $500 for that thing, and then you're going to be paying probably $600 or $650 for the PS5 Pro. The PSVR 2, on the other hand, is one of those things where if they took a loss on the hardware, I think it would ultimately benefit them because once you strap that thing on your head and start playing some games like Resident Evil Village, Gran Turismo 7, Pavlov, Arizona Sunshine 2, The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, once you see the experience of using the PSVR 2, that's what makes it a thing that you'll actually want to use. It's not necessarily something that you can envision being very cool until you actually try it on. And I feel like the biggest barrier to that is the price being around $550 or $600. So yeah, while it is awesome that they're doing this update and allowing it to work with PC and they're taking on Meta and they're taking on Apple by doing so, I think they need to kind of work on getting the price down because also Valve is supposedly entering the standalone VR headset ring later this year with the Valve Deckard, which is going to be a headset that doesn't need to be connected to your PC. It's going to be able to natively play games. It's probably going to have a very similar chip to the Steam Deck inside of it, and it's not going to have any wires or anything like that. And if you look at the hardware that Valve put out with the Index, the only reason it's not beating out the PSVR 2 is because it's much older than the PSVR 2, right? Like it's just older tech, and the technology in VR headsets is moving very fast because it's a new platform. So if Valve is going to come and hit the market with something that's on par with or better than the PSVR 2, and it has the capability to kind of disconnect it and not need that long wire to connect it to the PlayStation 5 or the PC, that's going to be more competition that I feel like Sony doesn't need. So I feel like by the end of the year, they should really consider dropping the price of the PSVR 2. They say they want to do it in 2024. I really hope that happens sooner rather than later, obviously, because I want to use my PSVR 2 more, and I already have so many games on PC for VR because I got the Oculus Quest 1, I got the Oculus Quest 2. Both of those headsets had the capability to plug them in with a long USB-C cord to your PC, so I bought a lot of VR games on Steam that still get updates to this day. And even if they come to PSVR 2, they always have a little bit of a tax where they get that new refreshed asking price where it's basically full price once again, and then you go look at Steam and all the same games basically are a lot cheaper. But yeah, with games like Legendary Tales coming out later this year, I think it's finally time for PSVR 2 to hit the ground running and show everyone that it is good hardware and it is worth investing in. The one update I always wanted was making it work with PC. Looks like we're getting that. So the next update I think it needs is dropping the price to around $350 to $400. I mean, the Quest 3 is around 600, so if you can get below that price point by at least $100, that's where the thing starts getting interesting. I mean, they just saw the same thing with the PlayStation Portal. But yeah, speaking about the PlayStation Portal, there are two updates we have around this thing to talk about. The first one is that it's finally been hacked. So this hack is coming from two Google engineers named Andy Wen and Cal Svensson, and they collaborated with the Twitter user XYZ to get a PSP emulator running on the PlayStation Portal. I don't know if you've ever looked at it, but I'm pretty sure the PSP emulator that everyone uses is called PPSSPP, which is the weirdest name ever. I would have just called it like PSP emulator at that point or something like that. But regardless, it is really cool to see a game like Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories running on this handheld, and it really just gets me excited for the possibility of this future where we have a version of it that can natively run PS4, PS5, and even PS6 games. Unfortunately, the onboard storage on this thing is only 6 gigabytes, so because of that, they say they're not going to release the firmware that you need, the homebrewed firmware that you'd have to install to actually get this emulator up and running. But I feel like there's enough demand there where people would actually want to do this because, I mean, if it can run the emulator, I don't really understand why Sony stopped short of putting an SD card slot in this thing and allowing it to play the PlayStation Plus premium classics. You've got everything going from the PS1 all the way up to the PSP, and if this thing can run PSP games, I'd imagine it could run PS1 and PS2 games without even breaking a sweat, right? But the silver lining here, of course, is that it's been hacked in the first place, so I'm hoping that other people are able to hack it and get DuckStation with the PS1 emulation or their own version of PPSSPP running on this device, or even PCSX2, which is the best PS2 emulator that I use on my Steam Deck. So yeah, the only reason I could honestly think of as to why Sony wouldn't have put in a bigger SSD or an SD card slot in the PlayStation Portal is because this thing was a test bed to see if there's interest in a PlayStation handheld. And as we know, people are really excited to pick this thing up. It's selling so much better than I think Sony expected. It was sold out for like the first 2 months it was available. And that kind of leads directly into those rumors that we've heard that they are working on a successor to the PS Vita or the PSP. Like PSP 3, I think is what they should call it. But yeah, that covers the first PlayStation Portal update. And the second one, unfortunately, is not very positive. And it all centers around the fact that this thing is built to stream games from your PlayStation 5. And it does it over the PlayStation Network, which we all know tends to go down a lot. And this is kind of all lining up with the massive success launch of Helldivers 2. It seems like there are just far too many people on the PlayStation Network, and people are running into a bad error on their PlayStation portals. So the post I found is coming from the user EvilEye2K17, and there's an error on their screen on their portal that says something went wrong, try again later, and the error code is 105. They say just started as soon as I tried to log into my PSN account, was wondering if anyone else had run into it. I tried restarting, going into the settings and factory resettings, but it works perfectly until the screen that I get here. Is the PSN just down? And then there's a lot of comments from people saying they talked to support and there's a big network issue. And then there's a bunch of comments from people saying they're also running into these issues and that they talked to support from PlayStation and they're just saying there's a network error that they're actively working to resolve. Now, it looks like they fixed it the first time pretty quick, but I checked and it looks like all week this has been happening intermittently, which really sucks because the thing only does one thing, which is connect to your PlayStation 5 and play your games on a portable screen over the internet. So if it can't do that, the device is effectively useless, which again points out one of the biggest problems with the PlayStation Portal, which is that if Sony doesn't decide to support this thing on the PlayStation 6, it's just going to be an effectively wasted $200. Now, it's not entirely wasted, right? Like you could say, well, I paid $200 for it. I played through Final Fantasy Rebirth, God of War Ragnarok, Valhalla, Grand Theft Auto 6, and a few other games on there, and I definitely got my $200 worth, but that really presents one of the biggest issues with this hardware that only exists to stream games from the internet. And I think that's a big reason why it isn't completely taken off and that the PlayStation Portal is really the only success story in that realm. But yeah, that half of the news story was more of a PSA just to let you know that if you're running into issues on your PlayStation Portal, the problem is on the PlayStation Network and it should be resolved soon as more people kind of fall off of Helldivers 2 and move on to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, because man, those reviews are crazy. But yeah, that brings us to the next news story on the list here, and that is two games that I think are worth paying attention to right now. Of course, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I don't have to give a shout out to. I think a lot of people are excited for that. They're going to pick it up day one, especially after seeing all the 10 out of 10 reviews. The one I want to focus on is Pacific Drive. Now, I played the demo for this game during the Steam Next Fest, which is basically an event Steam runs where they allow you to play a bunch of demos, and I was really underwhelmed with the performance of the game, but it seems like a lot of those issues have been ironed out for the official release. And my friend Jake Baldino just did a video over on GameRank mechanics. He's also going to be posting one on his main channel later this week, but he made the game sound absolutely phenomenal. So what you do is you take this station wagon that's ripped out of National Lampoon's Vacation, you do runs into the zone, and the anomalies can kind of attack you. It looks like they could either be something like a gust of wind or a weird tree, or they could even be a mannequin that sits in the middle of the road, which is kind of creepy and cool and what initially got me into the game. But then those anomalies can kind of attack your car and break it down. So while you're looking for your objective in those zones, you also have to scavenge parts that you can bring back to the garage and fix your car up. But because it's an older style station wagon, it has quirks like all of our first cars did, and those can either help you or hurt you, and you have to do a puzzle to identify those quirks to actually remove them, which I think is really cool. It's also just cool to see Sony pick out a few indie games that they really put money and support behind every year. Last year we had Stray and Humanity. This year we have Pacific Drive, which has been featured in quite a few state of plays. So if you want to check this game out, it's only $30. It runs great on PlayStation 5, and it looks like if you were expecting it to be a 15 to 20 hour experience, you're going to get a lot more gameplay out of it than you were probably expecting. So maybe check the game out if you're having some time between Helldivers and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, or if you're not planning on playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, maybe check the game out as well. The second thing I want to highlight is the Peacemaker trailer for the character DLC in Mortal Kombat 1. I'm a very casual plus Mortal Kombat fan. I play all the story modes. I get my ass kicked on online, so I usually bounce off pretty quick after launch, but they've always done a good job supporting these games with characters I really like Jason Voorhees, the Predator, Alien, Freddy Krueger, RoboCop, and now this time around they've got two of my favorite modern characters, Peacemaker and Homelander, coming to the game, which is sweet. I was not expecting to be blown away as much as I was by this Peacemaker trailer though. They pulled him directly from the TV show, which if you haven't seen it, you gotta fix that immediately. I think there's early access if you have the combat pack of a week or two, but the official release date for Peacemaker is March 6th. I hate how early this trailer came out. I feel like that's something that you drop right when the character launches. I know Mortal Kombat 1 had a great initial hit sales wise, but then it sort of dropped off. Hopefully adding crossplay by the end of February and adding in Peacemaker gets people to come back in. But yeah, I'll be playing this character day one. So yeah, that about covers it for this PS Ready update. Make sure you let me know what you think down in the comments below. Remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.